The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to the last lesson for the term. So only this lesson and then a couple of weeks of holidays. We will be back again next term. So I know we were having some discussions about that, but we will be back again next term, which is good news, and we look forward to seeing all of you guys again back next term, listening in and learning some new strategies about chess each week. All right, today we're going to be looking at some checkmates. Obviously, that's the way to finish a game of chess, and checkmates, the few of these checkmate situations that we've taken for today come from a really good book called 1001 Brilliant Ways to Checkmate. Now, this was like a classic textbook for pretty much every junior chess player when I was growing up. I used to take this book on the train with me, and each page had 6 puzzles on it, 6 positions that you would set up and have a look at. And I used to do these on the train in my head. So I would look at this position, I would try and think, gee, what could I do here to get black in checkmate? And I would try and analyse and think about it and work out what the story was and what's the best move in this position. I go, oh, yep, okay, here's the checkmate, and I'd work it through. Might be 3, 4, 5, 6 moves ahead, and I would try and work out what's the best move going to be, and then how am I going to get my opponent in checkmate. And I'd go through 2 or 3 pages on the train each day on the way to school and then back home again. And, of course, this is the best way to improve your tactical skills, is to see lots and lots and lots and lots of puzzles, lots of positions where you've got to try and work out what's the best move. And then obviously you're never going to get that exact position in your game, but you might get a very similar position. You'll get a very similar setup. So this first position that we have here, it's white's turn to move, and we've got to try and work out what can white do to get black in checkmate in a few moves. Right, now I'm going to be showing you these answers, but I want you to start thinking about not just what the answer is going to be. Obviously, if you can type into your chat box what your answer is going to be here and you get it right, that's great. But also what thinking process you go through to work out how to get a checkmate. Now, we've made it a lot easier for you because here in this position, I'm tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, guess what? There's checkmate coming up. If you're white, it's your move. You can force a checkmate. There's nothing black can do. You can force a checkmate in the next few moves. All right. In a game, when you're playing in a real-life game situation, of course, nobody comes and taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, guess what? Checkmate coming up. You've got to work that out for yourself. So that makes it a little bit harder. But we're going to make things simpler to start off with. We're going to say, what can white do here to get checkmate in the next few moves? All right. So if anyone's got any suggestions or answers, feel free to just type them into the chat box and let me know what you think the best move might be. Now, the thought process that you should be going through, particularly when you know it's checkmate, or when you know that there's a combination or a series of moves that's going to get you into a checkmate in the next few moves, the first thing you should be doing is using a rule that we call Tal's law. Tal is T-A-L, and Mikhail Tal was the world chess champion, and he was renowned for being an amazing tactician. So remember, strategies, we've talked a few strategies this term, things like control the center of the board or control an open file. Strategies are ideas which help you to choose your move. When you're choosing a move, you're now thinking about tactics. You're thinking, I go there, he goes there, I go there, he goes there, oh, then I've got a checkmate. Or if I go there, oh no, hang on a second, that's not a good move because my opponent's going to respond like this. Right? So strategy is your plan, it's what you're aiming for long term, but you also need to have in your mind tactics. Right? And chess is 50-50. If you have bad strategy and you say, oh, I'm going to move all my pieces on the edge of the board, you're going to lose the game. But if you've got bad tactics, equally, you're going to lose the game. So if you can easily lose a game in one move from here. Right? It's white's turn to move. You can get checkmate no matter what in 4 moves. Black can't stop you. But if you just make one mistake, you could lose the game in 4 moves. Right? So it's really easy in chess to change from a winning to a losing position. Just one move can do it. And that's why the tactics are so important, to really look carefully. If I do that move, what's my opponent going to do next? and think through all of the different possibilities that your opponent's going to do. So Mikhail Tal, he was the world champion who was just amazingly good at tricks and tactics. Right? In one game, he sacrificed 2 knights in a game. And not only his opponent, but all of the spectators and the commentators who were watching that game and commentating on that game said, this is crazy. He's just sacrificed these pieces. We don't have any idea what he's doing. This is complete madness. And it wasn't for 20 moves that people knew what was going on. And 20 moves later, Mikhail Tal ended up with a checkmate. And he'd actually, while he's sitting at the board thinking, he'd thought through 20 steps into the future to try and work out what his best move was. And he came up with an amazing way of sacrificing something. In that case, it was some knights, and ending up with a checkmate. All right. So we've got a few suggestions here. Now, Mikhail Tal's law says always think about 2 things. The first one is check, because if you put your opponent's king in check, they have to get out of check. So they can't really choose to take your queen or put you in check or threaten you or even do a defensive move. If they're in check, they must get themselves out of check. So that's the first most powerful move that you've got to think about. How many different ways can I get my opponent in check? And here for white, there are at least 3 different moves that white can do to put black in check. Right? So white can now put black in check in 3 different ways. Okay, now we've got bishop takes pawn is 1, because then that would put the opponent's king in check. We could do bishop to h7, and that would put the king in check. And our queen could take the pawn here, and that would put the king in check. All right, so it's white's turn to move. White's got to try and get checkmate in 4 moves. It says here 4 moves. That means that's how many moves it is until checkmate. So there's 3 things that he can do to get check. I'll just draw them in so we remember them. 1 with the bishop, 2 with the bishop check, and 3 with the bishop check. All right, there are 3 moves that can put your opponent in check. Now, we have to think through each of those 3 moves to see if any of them leads to a checkmate. All right. The second type of move that Mikhail Tal said you had to think about was capture, where you can take a piece. Right? Because if you take one of your opponent's pieces, if they don't take you back, you're ahead on pieces. You're ahead on material, you've got a bigger army than your opponent, and you're most likely going to win the game later on. So we think about what pieces we can take, and we can see our knight can take the pawn, our queen can take the queen, and our queen can take the pawn here. Right? We've also got queen takes pawn or bishop takes pawn here, and those moves are captures as well, where you can take a piece. All right, so when it's your turn to move, Mikhail Tal, if you were Mikhail Tal, if you were the world champion, if you wanted to be the best tactical player ever, you would first of all list in your mind every single possible forcing move. That is, every move that puts your opponent in check or that takes a piece. Right? Now, listing a move in your mind doesn't mean that you actually have to do that move, does it? Right? It just means you need to think about it. Right? You need to be considerate of that move. And then you go through each of them step by step and you work out, well, which move is going to be the best one. So let's start off with bishop h7 check. Okay, we say we put the bishop on h7 check. Obviously the king could just take it. Now, what's the next move going to be? Can we get him in check? Can we take another piece? All right? And if you can put him in check or take another piece, then you think, all right, well, actually, I can bring my knight up, take that pawn, that'd be check. Then he'll move his king back to where he came from, so the king's back on g8. And now is there a check or way of taking a piece? All right? And if there's not, then you say, oh, that's it, that's over. That variation doesn't work out. Right? You think through a few moves. If it doesn't work out for you, that's fine. You say, well, that bishop check isn't going to work. You do need to look at all your opponent's possibilities. So after bishop check, you also have to consider what happens if you put him in check with your bishop and then he just moves his king into the corner. Right? Can't get him in check again, so you're not going to be able to get him in checkmate. Okay? So the first thing to do is list in your mind all the different possibilities for check and capture. Right? Doesn't mean that you're going to play them, but you have to list them. Right? Then you work through them like we did with the bishop. You say bishop check. Oh, if he takes you, does that work? What if he moves in the corner? Does that work? Right? And you think through all those possibilities. All right. We've got a lot of choices here. All right? We've got the queen can take 4 different things, the bishop can do a check and go different ways, the knight can take the pawn. So there is a lot of different possibilities. We need to sort of sort those in order and work out which one we're going to think about first. And the best ones to think about first are always the more powerful ones. So if you can do a move which takes a piece and puts your opponent in check at the same time, well, that's going to be the most powerful one. So there's 2 moves that we need to think about, which are both checks and captures. That's bishop takes pawn or queen takes pawn. Right? So both of those moves would be the ones to think about first because they're the most powerful ones. And then after that, you think about the other checks, and then after that, you think about the captures. All right? So we can go through and we can think about, well, what if the bishop takes the pawn? If the bishop takes the pawn, let's check. Okay, again, he could take you back, or he could just move his king into the corner of the board. All right, so let's say bishop takes pawn check, king moves into the corner. Do we have any other ways that we can put the king in check again to keep on attacking? No, there's nothing else that we can do. All right, so the bishop takes pawn doesn't work. All right, what if we do queen takes pawn? If we do queen takes pawn, that puts black's king in check. Now, again, black can take you, or he can move his king into the corner. So if the king moves into the corner, can anyone see what white could do then to get checkmate next move? Okay, king moves into the corner. Then the queen can take this rook, and that's checkmate. All right, I might actually just put that up on the screen for you. Okay, so if the queen takes that, if the king moves into the corner, queen takes the rook, checkmate. Okay, so let's put that up on the screen. King moves in the corner, queen takes checkmate. Yeah, so the king can't move forwards because the bishop's got him covered. Everything's great. All right, so after the queen takes the pawn, it's check, and you can see that that's a really powerful forcing move. There's only one thing that black can do, which is to take your queen. All right, now that's not going to work out well for you, but we have to think these things through just in case it does work out. All right, so he's taking your queen. You've now lost your queen for nothing, but is there another way of getting him in check again? Well, now there's a new one. We can do rook to the back row, check. And we think through for black. Well, what can black do? Can black take it? Can black block? Can black move his king out of the way? When you're in check, 3 things. Take, block, or run. Okay, here, he's in check. Can't move his king out of the way because of the bishop. Can't take the rook, but he can drop his rook back and block. Right, so black can block. Okay, again, we think through things here. We say, look for all checks and captures. Is there anything that we could do to put our opponent in check and take a piece? Well, rook takes rook, that's check, and it's taking something. Not only that, but black doesn't have any choice now. The only thing black can do is to take you back. Right, and then what's the next move going to be? The 4th move for white, and we've got checkmate next move. I'll give you guys a second or two to think about it. What would white's next move be to get black in checkmate? And I've got to say hi to Daniel, who's typed me a message to say, hi, I'm Daniel, what's going on here? Well, we're trying to work out a way that white can get black in checkmate unstoppable. Okay, so from our original situation, from our starting position, all right, which is here, white can do some moves which force black to end up in checkmate. Black cannot stop it from here. All right, and the first move is queen takes pawn, that's check. And we saw the only thing that black can do is to take your queen. All right, as soon as he takes your queen, that opens your rook up for a check on the back row. All right, put the rook down to the back row. Rook's now attacking the king, check. Then black has no choice. He has to move his rook back to block you. Then you take him, and he has to take you back. Again, no choice. So from the start, black hasn't had a choice in this matter. Black has to end up in this position if white does that queen takes pawn check. And now, we haven't had anyone suggest the right move yet, but that's okay. The checkmate move that white can do is put his rook to e8, and there's checkmate. All right. Rook comes down to the back row, protected by the bishop, so black's now in check. He can't take the rook, he can't block it off, because it's right next to you, and he can't move away. So no matter what, that's checkmate. All right, let's try that again. Let's go on to the next question and see if we can work out from the starting position how can white get black into checkmate unstoppable. What's going on here? Technical difficulty. The computer is slightly frozen, so just give us a second. Well, we seem to be experiencing some technical difficulties here. Let's just see if I can. We do have internet access, so things are going okay there. But I don't seem to have my next checkmate coming up on the screen. Alright, you're going to have to bear with me. Sorry about this. This is the, I guess, proves that it's live. Nothing's recorded. We've got ourselves in a situation where my computer is just frozen. Can't do anything at the moment, so we're just going to hold on for one moment while I try and load up a different window, and we'll get that checkmate. We'll get that checkmate back up and running again in just a second. Alright, sorry about this, people. The wonders of technology. Alright, I'm going to try and swap this over now. And come on, computer. Oh, everything's freezing. Ah, disaster. Trying again. Sorry guys, this is my computer going crazy. We're going to try again. Okay, we're going to get you some checkmates on the screen. Come on. In the meantime, I'll tell you a little bit more about Mikhail Tal, who was the best tactical player of all time. All right, Mikhail Tal was world champion, and he was renowned for being a great tactical player, but he also had an evil stare, is what people said. He had an evil stare. There were situations where he was in a game and he would look up at his opponent so intently that they felt like his eyes were burning into them, and and were actually distracting them or putting evil thoughts or mean thoughts into their mind. And people said that he was a magician. They called him the magician from Riga because he was born in Riga in Latvia, and he used to have this stare which he gave people who would just look at them during the game, and they thought that he was doing some sort of magic to them. All right, hopefully everyone's screens are back on. We've got a position here where it's again white's turn to move and to get black into checkmate. All right, so following Mikhail Tal's law, we're going through the same things again. We're saying, all right, how can we put black in check? How can we take a piece? All right, white's turn to move. We've got to think of those two things. Let's list in our mind all the ways that we can do a check or a capture. All right, so first of all, we could put the rook down to the very back and put black in check. Second thing we could do, we could use the queen to take the pawn, and that would put black in check. Right. There's no other ways to put black in check. What ways are there to capture something, to take a piece? Right. So we could, first of all, we could try and take the bishop. Okay, the queen can take the bishop, and also the pawn is also a capture. So we can take the pawn in two different ways. We can do queen takes, well, the queen takes pawn is two different forcing moves. It's both a check and a capture. So this one's a little bit simpler. There's only three possibilities that we have to think through to try and work out what the checkmate is. Right? Always forcing moves though, checks or captures. So out of those three moves, which one are we going to think about first? Well, we can do queen takes bishop, which takes a piece. We can do rook to the back row, which is check. But the most powerful one looks like queen takes pawn, which is check, and at the same time taking a piece. So because it's doing both, it's the most powerful move. All right, so we've got a check and a capture planned. Let's think it through. If the queen takes the pawn, check, what could black do? Well, straight away you would notice that black's knight could take you. So let's see what happens. Queen takes pawn, check. Black's knight comes up and takes the queen. Seems pretty good. Then again, we think through from here. What things can we do to check or capture? So again, the rook can come down there, or the bishop can come down here, okay, which are both checks. Right. Bishop takes knight looks much more powerful because it's check and capture. So let's try doing that move. Bishop takes knight. Now after bishop takes knight, black's in check. Okay. Three things to think about. Can you take the bishop? No, black can't take the bishop at all. Can you put something in the way to block it off? No, pawns can't go side and rooks can't go diagonal, so there's no way to block it off. And can you move the king anywhere? No, can't move the king anywhere because white's rook has it covered the whole way through. So that is actually checkmate. All right, back from the start, in this position here, we think it through, and normally you wouldn't think about taking a pawn and losing your queen unless you were thinking the next step ahead. And you say, well, hang on, if I take him, he takes me. Oh, look what my next move could be, checkmate. All right, let's go on and do another one. Okay, here we've got a situation, again, it's white's turn to move. White can get black in checkmate. Again, this is a little bit easier than the first one. What can white do? So first of all, look for all the checks and captures. Right? What could white do to put black in check? What could white do to take a piece? And see if you can work out the most powerful move from that. So the first thing to do is just list those in your mind, and then after you've listed them all, then you try and work out which one's the best one. All right, so let's have a bit of a think. All right, we could do bishop here, check. That puts black into check. We could do queen takes pawn. All right, that puts black into check. We could, if we wanted to take a piece, do pawn takes pawn, or bishop takes pawn. Those moves would capture pieces. So there's four things to choose from. We call these candidate moves, 4 candidate moves. Now we think, well, which one do we want to look at first? The first one, of course, is going to be the most powerful one. Is there something we can do to take a piece and to put him in check at the same time? All right, there is. Queen takes pawn is check. All right, we're going to be coming down here and putting the king in check, and gets to take a pawn at the same time. So that's probably going to be the most powerful one. So let's think about that. Queen takes pawn. Now, you think about that, but doesn't mean you have to do it. All right, because of course, if you do queen takes pawn, black's rook can just take you. So you need to plan another step ahead. If you do queen takes pawn and he takes you, do you have a good comeback, or are you just giving away your queen for no reason? All right. Any suggestions? Anyone want to type in what they think is going to happen if black's rook takes white's queen? Any ideas what's going to happen? Thinking. Right, again, look for all the checks and captures. To play a good tactical move, right, to try and work out what your opponent's going to do next and what you can do the move after, and think 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 moves ahead, you have to use forcing moves, checks or captures. Right, checks and captures are the only moves which end up winning the game for you. If you don't take something, you can never get ahead on material, you can never get a bigger army, so you're not going to win the game. If you never put your opponent in check, You can't get them in checkmate. So checks and captures are always the moves which win the game. All right, so we've got the answer now. Charlie said if the rook takes that, then the next move, bishop to g6, and now black's in checkmate. Can't take the bishop, can't block it off, can't move his king away anywhere. That's checkmate. All right, so we're getting the hang of this. Let's do the next one. See if we can work out a way from here that white could do, again, a forced checkmate in, I think in this one, 4 moves. All right, what could white do to get black in check in 4 moves? So to start off with, we think about all the checks and captures first of all. Look for any move that we could do that could take a piece, that could put your opponent in check. Okay. And remember, I'm coming and telling you there's checkmate in this situation. When you're playing a real game, 9 times out of 10, maybe even 99 times out of 100, the moves that you're looking at aren't going to end up in checkmate. But you've got to keep thinking about them, thinking about them, thinking about them, just for the one time in the game that it does end up in checkmate. You don't want to miss that opportunity. All right, so here we can put knight to put the king in check. We can use the rook to take the bishop and put the king in check. We can use the knight coming over this way and put the king in check. So those are the checks. And captures, well, there's only the one, rook takes bishop. So this one looks a bit easier. We've got, oh, yep, you're right. Thank you. Joy's also reminded me that knight takes bishop is a capture as well. So I might just make the captures in yellow because they're not as powerful as checks. And maybe we'll make that rook takes bishop in red, right? Because that's both rook takes bishop is the one that you would normally think about first, because rook takes bishop is check and it takes a piece at the same time. All right, then you look through knight c7 check and knight to f6 check, which is just a check, and then the last thing you would think about is just taking the piece. Okay, so we've got 4 things to think about here. The first one we're going to think about, rook takes bishop check. All right, so after rook takes bishop check, king can't take the rook, can't block it off, the king has to move away. So let's say the king moves out of danger. All right. Once the king moves out of danger, what's the next move going to be for white? Well, we think things through again. We can do rook to the back line check. We can do rook takes pawn check. There's no other checks. The only other capture with the rook is rook takes pawn on b7. Okay, so there's not all that many. So we think about it again. We could do rook to the back row check or rook takes pawn. I would usually think about rook takes pawn first because it's a more powerful move. You take check, he takes you back. All right, now we're running out of checks and captures here. There's only 2. There's only queen to h5 or queen to f3. So the queen comes to h5 check. Doesn't work out very well. You get taken and there's no more checks or captures. If we go queen to f3 check, okay, let's pop the queen on f3 check, then black can move out of the way. Maybe instead of moving back there, you could move forwards. We could move forwards here. He's got quite a few possibilities, and we're running out of checks and captures. Okay, move forward this way as well, and we're starting to find that it's a bit difficult to do checks and captures. He can block with his bishop, and you're saying, well, I don't see any checkmate. I don't see any checkmate here, not in 4 moves anyway. So let's go back to the start. Okay, that tells me that after rook takes bishop check and the king moves out of the way, we don't have a checkmate anymore. Okay, you can sacrifice your rook as well, and you can put your opponent in check and sacrifice your queen, but after all those checks, you're not going to have a checkmate. So that means that this first move, rook takes e7, even though it looks like the most powerful one because it's check and capture, isn't actually the winning move here. Okay, so now we're going to go through some other ones where you can maybe go for a check instead. So rather than knight f6, I'm going to try knight c7 first, because this one you can just get taken. So knight c7 check. New main line, there we go. Knight c7 check, and now black has to get out of check. Can't take, can't block. The only thing he can do, can't move this way because of the queen. The only thing he can do is move to f8. All right, so again, now we think through all the checks and captures. Well, we could do knight here check. We could do queen to the back row check. We've got a couple of captures. We can do rook takes bishop check. Sorry, rook takes bishop, not check, but just taking a bishop. Okay, and we could do another capture where you could take the rook in the corner of the board. So there's a few things. Again, the most powerful one to think about is the checks. All right, so knight to e6 check, and then the bishop takes you. Doesn't seem to get you into a better position. You've got only 2 pieces left. You can bring your queen down and do a check, and then your queen gets taken. But it looks like black's pretty safe here. So let's go back here and we'll say, well, what about queen to d8 check instead? Okay, queen goes down to d8 check. 3 things that black thinks about. Can you take, block, or run away? Well, here, the only thing you can do, can't block or run away. The only thing you can do is take your queen. When he takes your queen, we look through it again. Any way that we can do check or take a piece. And we notice now that when you put your rook down here, protected by the knight, right, that's actually checkmate. Rook's attacking the king, can't take you, can't block, can't run away, and there's a checkmate. All right, so by thinking things through and looking at the forcing moves, checks and captures every step of the way, we didn't get it the first time. Right? Our first move that we tried was to use our rook to take the bishop. Right? And the rook taking the bishop didn't work out for us. Right? That wasn't going to be a checkmate. So then we went back and we tried something different. Now we tried knight check. Right? Then he moved out of the way and we sacrificed our queen, and then we ended up with a checkmate. Right? So by thinking through all of the different forcing moves, checks or captures, eventually you'll come to the conclusion, yes, this is a good move, or no, it's a bad move. And in the start of this game, right, we had 4 moves to choose from. The first one we looked at was bad, that's fine. The second one happened to be good. When you're playing your real games, you might have 4 moves to think about, and all 4 are going to be bad. So you won't do any of those moves. Instead, you'll just do a good developing move. Maybe you'll just move your queen into the attack or develop another piece. All right? Or castle, get your king safe, or do something completely different. Right? But you have to at least have thought about those forcing moves. So whenever you're playing your game, you should be following Mikhail Tal's law. He was the world champion, best tactical player ever. Look for checks, look for captures. Every move that you're playing, look for all ways of doing check or taking a piece. Right? And you're going to find all the best moves that way. You're also going to notice all the good moves that your opponent's going to do on you. So checks and captures when you're playing your games. Good luck, guys. I'm going to put one more up on the board here, and you can have a look and see if you can work this one out. This is a super hard one, but I'm going to leave that up on the screen for just 2 or 3 minutes. You guys can take a screenshot or a photograph and see if you can set that up on a chessboard and work out what would you do here if you were white to get checkmate in this position here. This one is going to be really tricky because once you've looked through all of your forcing moves, your checks and captures, you're going to realize that none of those moves, the checks or captures, is actually a winning move. So you're going to have to come up with a move here that's not a check, not a capture, that wins this game, which is what makes this move such a difficult one to find. All right? And grandmasters might not see this move here because it's a really tricky one. So thanks very much, everyone, for today. Thanks for bearing with me through the computer freeze halfway through. But like I said, that proves that we're live, and we look forward to seeing you after the school holidays. Have a good break and keep playing chess. Bye.